All right. Well, welcome everybody to Drew's Virtual Happy Hour. Again, my name, is Drew, guy that it's named after. I work for JVS Imports out in Sacramento, California, and the reason I set this up was to, kind of create a little bit of normalcy for people in times that are not normal at all. And with that has come a lot of fun guests from all over the industry. Some things I sell, some things I don't, but and sometimes a lot just people that I'm curious to talk more to. And fortunately, everybody's burdened with time right now, so a lot of people have said yes, and it's been really great to have so many cool people join me. And tonight's guest is no exception to that. Tonight we have the National Sales Director for Impex. He is a keeper of the Quake. He is a founding member of Single Cask Nation, One Nation Under Whiskey, the podcast, the Whiskey Jubilee, Whiskey Geek Tours. He is a true whiskey entrepreneur. He is Mr. Joshua Hatton. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Wow, thank you for having me. I love hearing all those things. That's very funny. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot, right? Like, I mean,
Wow.
as I was like going
Yeah.
through the thing, and I want you guys to know that I have read an obnoxious amount of articles about Mr. Hatton today. So some of the questions that you think I might ask, I probably won't, because I've seen 17 other people asking these questions. But at
Mm.
any point during this interview and really discussion, if you have questions, you can put them into the chat, or you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and ask the question yourself. It's pretty informal. I mean, obviously I don't look that professional, so I don't really care if you interrupt. I mean, I got a dinosaur behind me, so we're here to have fun and everything like that. So again, if you have any questions, you can use the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or just comments on some of the things that Joshua has said. So obviously, when you start off with that kind of lead in and all the whiskey things that you're into, Joshua, I think the
Mm.
question on everybody's mind after hearing that is, how is Colonel Agus and what has he been up to lately?
So Colonel Angus, or said with a southern accent, Colonel Angus is one of my cats, one of three that I have, and he's currently sleeping in my daughter's bed.
Good. So he's doing well. I thought that was I thought it was important to touch on, because when you pull up your YouTube channel right now, that is the first video you see is of Colonel Angus.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, it is right now. So I don't know what that's doing for your brand, but that's that's what pops up first.
It is that the Single Cast Nation YouTube or my own personal?
Your own personal one.
Okay. So long as I didn't put that on the Single Cast Nation one.
Yeah, no, it's a great little cut video together. And I also know that we have a couple other cat parents on this call, so I wanted to make sure that this was addressed first. So in doing my research and getting to page 9 of the Google search, one of the things that I saw was your gateway whiskey into this profession and this life was actually Lagavulin 16.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being the case, I mean, that's a big whiskey and not necessarily everybody's entry into this. So first, I want you to kind of talk about like what ended up being appealing about that whiskey, and then now that you're the seasoned vet and stuff like that, when people ask you, "Hey, I really want to get into single malts," what direction do you usually put them in?
Mm. I guess looking back, having Lagavulin 16 as your gateway whiskey it's a weird door into the wide world of whiskey. But I think it was kind of fitting. It was. I got a taste of that whiskey at my synagogue. It was after a Friday evening service, and there was a congregant there who he'd bring 5, 6 whiskeys every Friday night, and he would just let people join in. What did you want? And at that time, I really wasn't drinking too much, or at least not hard alcohol, because I had my fill of hard alcohol at a younger age, just going from A to point B. And anyway, I just decided to ask for a taste. Said, which one should I go for? And he said, well, do you want sweet or smoky? And I told him, I said, I didn't even know that a drink could be smoky. So I'd like that, please. Yes, please, and thank you. And so he poured me in a little plastic cup, smelled it, tossed it over the tongue, and I was instantly transported into just going camping with my dad. Being around the campfire, opening up, like my dad had, he would have cans of beans with him and he'd open them up, and then he had this utensil that would just like hold onto the can while you hang it over the fire. And then you heat the beans in the can. Like all that was happening. All of these memories were like flooding in. And that's what I found so appealing, that it wasn't just flavor. Like there's all sorts of foods and all sorts of drinks that taste great, but none until then really evoked a memory like that, So I think that is the reason why I took to it. When suggesting a whiskey to a new person, I definitely, if they have interest in smoke, then I would probably lead them down the path that I went. But I really like to know what people enjoy for other food and drink, and try to figure it out from there, and maybe give them an easier path in, because that could have gone horribly wrong. Like I could have told them I want to try smoky, and he says, "Oh, well, the man said smoky." Meanwhile, I freaking hate smoky, and then I would never have, turned my life into what you signed me. So it could have gone bad. So I like to get a little information first.
Yeah, I just thought that was so interesting because, so often the case for a lot of people is when they get introduced with an Isla Scotch, it's usually like, well, I'm done with this forever. And,
Yeah.
You went the exact opposite, which is so crazy to think about, So that's cool, though. And I think, for a lot of people, that's what kind of drinking eventually does become, is it's like this exercise in nostalgia for a lot of people. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, trying this, it reminds me of this time that I was hanging out with this person and stuff. So that's cool that you kind of got it right off the bat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump all over the place. So there's really no rhyme and reason to these questions, but when kind of get like the breakdown of everything that you did, one thing that really kind of stuck out to me was you multiple times in different interviews, you always reference your family and, finding time for them and stuff like that. I just am curious, when you are involved in as many things as you have been over your course in, journey through whiskey, like, what are those things that you do to find that balance? Like, what are those, are there any tips or tricks to like having that family life, but then also kind of being like this go-to person when it comes to whiskey?
Yeah. It's not very easy. I find myself kind of playing Tetris with time. Like, oh, I got a half hour here, I could do an hour here. That type of thing, to try to balance it all. I wouldn't say that there's any rhyme or reason, or that I have a very specific system. Being very honest, quite often I'm flying by the seat of my pants with time. What I can say to you, my wife and I share a Google Calendar, and we almost don't even talk about schedules anymore. It's just like, if she has, and she doesn't have a lot of stuff to throw on there. She's very good. She knows how busy I am, and she doesn't take up a lot of time, but on her calendar. But when she does, she's like, boom, that's my slot. I'm going to go out with the girls this night, and so we just throw all the things that we have in the calendar, and so that it's visible. And every day I go to Google, I look at my calendar, I see what's going on. Of course, nowadays it's friggin' as empty as could be. So it's a very different look. But it's really that it's just getting all the things that are planned, throwing in the solid events and things like that into the calendar, and being ready for things changing last second. Like, on a dime. So it's sort of a balance between planning and just being ready to make change whenever you need be.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. And sometimes, something as practical as that, like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that. Maybe a little bit more coordination. Like at my house, we're not as tech savvy, so we just have an old school calendar. And I just look at it, I'm like, okay, I got to make sure I do this day, this day, this day. So
Yeah.
totally with you on that one. So in 2011, you launch Single Cast Nation, and that was after 2 years of clawing, scratching, and prepping to do that. And I'm just curious, I know you were coming, like, you started kind of as a whiskey blogger, and
Mm.
then you wanted to start your own thing, but like how do you do that? Who's that first conversation that you have with it? You're just kind of like, okay, I want to go buy Cask. Who do I need to talk to, and how am I going to get one that doesn't suck?
It's so funny, when we first founded the business, it was before we even knew to ask that question. We just said, we're gonna. Well, so first off, the way it started, both Jason and I had our own individual blogs. I had been at the time working at a manufacturing facility that produced, industrial storage products. I loved the people that I worked with. I enjoyed my job, but I didn't enjoy what I was selling. And so all of my passion went into music, because I was in a full-time band, and whiskey. And the more and more I got into whiskey, the deeper and deeper I got into the world of independent bottlers and independent bottlings. And I started looking at the numbers. That we were getting, people coming to our website, them just looking, what does Joshua think of Lagavulin 16? What does Jason think of Lichig, whatever? And said, what if we bottled whiskeys that we fell in love with, and they're already coming to us with what we think of other people's whiskeys. Maybe they'll come to us with whiskeys that we love so much that we would want to bottle. So I had this idea to start this independent bottling company. I reached out to Jason. I asked him to be part of the company. He of course said yes. And not at any point in time did we think, how are we going to get the whiskey? Which was really funny. It just goes to show you how unbusiness savvy we both were at the very beginning. But thankfully, through the blog, through our individual blogs, we had connections with distilleries. We had connections with importers and distributors. Actually, Impex was pretty integral to our blogging life, because we got samples for the blog from Impex, which was great. But anyway, through the blog, we got to meet this guy named Andy Hogan, who was part of Isle of Arran Distillery, who Impex imported at the time. And we said, hey, we have this idea. We want to start an independent bottling company. Would Arran ever sell us a cask? Now, you ask that to 100+ other distilleries, and they're all going to say, we're not going to sell you a cask, and you're not going to find any distillery that will sell you a cask. But thankfully, Arran was a young distillery at the time, still is a fairly young distillery, independently owned, and Andy Hogan saw the value in selling to an independent bottler to get the name out there. And so that's how we got our first cask. It was through Arran. It wasn't until we started working in the industry for about a year and a half that we realized that there's actually brokers you can buy casks from. And that's where you get the majority of your casks. You're not getting them from the distilleries. If the distilleries are going to sell to someone, they're going to sell to a company that makes blends using their malts or their grain, or they're going to sell to a master broker that would rather buy 200 or 2,000 casks than 2 Jamokes looking to buy the one cask. You
Right.
know, the distillery is a factory that makes spirit to sell, and that's it. And we didn't have much to offer some of these distilleries, so we're very thankful to find brokers that they existed and that they were willing to sell us just one cask, two cask, what have you.
Nice. And and so you do have so many things going on, but not everything's going on all at once. Like I know the Whiskey Jubilee is a little bit on hiatus, and we'll see if you can get that going again in the future. But one thing that you do continue to do, and it's one of my favorite podcasts, is One Nation Under Whiskey. And it's I really like your guys' format where you kind of get to know both you and Jason, but then you also get to hear the interview, and then after more thoughts on it. I think it's just a really fun way to kind of tackle
Yeah.
a form of communication that's pretty saturated right now. And I was just curious that because over the past month, like I've reached out to people, and I continually am shocked by some of the people that say yes to me. And I was just wondering, in your position, with all the amazing guests and all the amazing distilleries that you've had on One Nation, like, is there anybody, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to see what you say, that when they said yes, you're kind of like, oh shit, I didn't think they'd say yes. Like it was like kind of cool if there was a couple people that maybe stand out to you.
Let's see. From a distillery standpoint, I think from a distillery standpoint, the one that surprised us the most was actually getting Jane Bowie from Maker's Mark. She's a name no one knows who Jane Bowie is. Raise your hand if you've heard of Jane Bowie. Yeah, there we go. Raise your hand if you knew about Jane Bowie before our podcast. Okay, there you go. One.
On that one.
Of course, it's. There are so many people that behind the scenes that they don't care about tooting their own horn. They're there to work a job that they love and make a product that they're passionate about. And so Jane Bowie, she's with Maker's Mark, and she's the one who designed, the whole store pick concept with putting the various staves in with the regular Maker's Mark bourbon to come up with your own store pick. And I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. And I hadn't heard of her either until we did the Great Isle of Swim bottling. And because Maker's Mark is owned by Beam, and she had heard about it because Beam was a big supporter of the Great Isle of Swim, she said she was really interested in getting a bottle. And so once we got in touch with her, she's this type of person that just doesn't really talk to anybody. She just wants to do her thing and just stay, she's the pay no attention to the man behind the curtain doing all the magic, and I loved finding this person that doesn't really make herself known. And she has a lot to talk about because she's smart as hell and knows how to make some great whiskey. So that was one that I was really happy about, to kind of share that name with people. And then the other one has nothing to do with whiskey. We had gotten Matthew Rhys, who's a Emmy award-winning actor from The Americans, on the podcast. And we were lucky enough to get him because he's Welsh. And he's a very proud Welshman, and he works closely at times with Penderyn. And when I heard about this, I spoke to my friends at Penderyn and said, if there's any way we can get Matthew Rhys to do it, because he lives in New York. They said, yeah, let's, I'll have some conversations. And then they said, he's into it. Here's his email address. So now I have this actor's email address, and okay, now I have to craft the perfect email he said yes already, but what if I come off as a dick and sorry, there's a child here. What if I come off as a, what, to him? But anyway, in the end, it all worked out. And it was just a fabulous conversation, being able to talk to someone about his life in the arts over some really good whiskeys. Yeah, it was a blast, and I never thought I'd get someone like him on the podcast.
Yeah, that one was really cool. I do remember at a certain point where I was like, man, they are really promoting the hell out of this Matthew Reese interview. Like it just seemed like that was the that was the one that was really moving the needle for a lot of people. Um, so kind of going back in time and going back to your whiskey blog. Um, a lot of people, they're always talking about tasting notes, and they want to, like you see it on Facebook groups all the time. Like people are just like giving their opinion on stuff and whatnot. I'm curious, when you first started off, like what were the things that you were doing to help develop your palate, and then when you were kind of cultivating your vocabulary for it, because now I don't think that website is active anymore that you had, or at least I wasn't able to find it. But it seemed like by some of the interviews I'd read that like you had a pretty unique vocabulary when it came to describing whiskeys that people really gravitated towards. So like what was your process in developing that vocabulary, and then also just really developing your palate and having that confidence just to be like, hey world, this is what I'm into and this is what I think of it.
Mm. Well, the first thing I had, well, I'll tell you this. Enjoying that Lagavulin 16, which I want to say was probably in 2005 or so. I would say it probably wasn't until 2000, early 2007, that I even figured out how to actually taste a whiskey. Like I'd pour a whiskey and I would taste it and I'd say, yes, this tastes good. That's spicy. This is smoky. This is sweet. And that's really as far as I got. And then one evening, I was sitting down to TV, and I poured some Glenmorangie Nectar D'Or, and it was a fairly newish product at that time, and all of a sudden, I just held the whiskey in my mouth a different way, and swallowed the whiskey in a different way, and I started tasting things that I'd never tasted in any other whiskey. Like all of a sudden, notes were just, different flavors were just flashing everywhere. I was getting toasted nuts and dried apricots and cream cheese and, just really weird notes. And I drank a lot that night. So I'm like, oh man, now what does this one taste like? Like I figured out, I said, I felt like I cracked the code, and like how my mouth works. Like somehow, like, you're that person on Hellraiser that learned how to open up the box. Like you'd had the box the whole time, and then sorry that this isn't working for the younger kids in the group here. But anyway, I cracked the code and I figured out how to taste a whiskey. And so I said, good. Now I can discover notes. And I used to go to different blogs and just figure out, and I would look at point systems. What got 90 points and above. What got 4 stars, what got 5 stars, something like that. And I didn't pay too much attention to the notes because I didn't understand them. But once I like cracked my mouth code, I went back to these blogs with the whiskeys I had on hand to see if my palate matched the palate of the blogger. And if it didn't, then I would go on to a different blogger until I found the ones where my palate lined up with theirs. And so I found that my palate lined up with Serge Valentin at Whiskey Fun, Ruben at Sam Simmons at Dr. Whiskey, and this guy who had this blog called Whiskey Host named Jason Johnston Yellen. And that's how I found Jason. It was just, discovering his blog. And so I found my palate was matching with theirs. And I thought these guys are writing some really interesting notes. Some of my notes are matching, some of them aren't. Maybe I'll start my own. And so I went in and I decided to do sort of a no, it sounds kind of silly to say this, but kind of a no holds barred review site where I would just whatever came to my mind, even if it sounded stupid, if that came to my mind, then that's what I'm smelling or that's what I'm tasting. And if other people identify with it, great. If it seems so esoteric that it just doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me, that's okay. I'm going to put it down anyway. Like I've gotten notes of warm He-Man action figures and, dead muskrats and, you know, dirty diapers and, you name it. And I would just put it there. And I often liked to accompany some key images with the funniest tasting note. So one I remember, I had a Bruichladdich, and I love Bruichladdich, but there's so much baby sick in all the Bruichladdich. You just get that sweet kind of baby vomit note, which is not a bad thing. Like if you're a parent, you get that. It's a very pretty note. Or if you're an aunt or an uncle, you might get that. It's not vomit. It's a sweet milk note. And so I remember, but this one was over the top. Like it was too much. And so I posted my notes, and I had a picture of Will Ferrell drinking like some rotten milk. I forget what movie, but it was totally like lumpy milk. And at the time, I was allowing comments on my blog. And Mark Renier, who had owned Bruichladdich at the time, commented. He said, "There's no way you're getting baby sick in my whiskey. You would never find it in my whiskey. You must be cleaning your glass with a dirty tea towel." And so I emailed him separately and very diplomatically. And I seemed to calm him down, so much so that he asked the importer at the time to send me all the samples that I need. And I started getting a lot of Bruichladdich samples, which was nice. But yeah, so it's just me going with the first thing that came to my mind. Most of my notes come from are nostalgic notes, my memories of something. But quite often that needs updating. Like I did a note on a whiskey where I could have sworn I gotten Fruity Pebbles. And then I bought a box of Fruity Pebbles for my daughters. Just not because they wanted Fruity Pebbles, but just because I needed to know if my memory of Fruity Pebbles was correct. And my memory of Fruity Pebbles was not correct at all. So I don't know what I was smelling in that whiskey. So I often go to grocery stores and I update my nose. I'll go to the produce section and I smell all the fruits and vegetables. I go to the bread aisle. I'll go to the where the fish is and the meats are, and I'm just smelling everything. And I just try to remember it. And
that might be a practice that's frowned upon at this point in time.
Yeah.
Might have to be a little bit more sly about that in the future. That's really awesome though. There's definitely a couple of takeaways, like cracked my mouth code is something that I'm going to start saying to more people because that's amazing. And I really love like the, finding He-Man plastic, and because tasting notes can be so personal. And I remember for a long time I would hate when I'd be tasting something and I wouldn't say it, and then someone else would say it, and I would be mad at myself for not having the confidence to like come forward and be like, damn it, I could have had that moment and I missed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't be wrong because it's what you taste. So, and I think that's one of the things I try to emphasize when I do my tastings and stuff. But the kind of go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the thing I wanted to expand upon on that is there's actually a moment in time where you said that you've kind of grown numb to nearly all whiskey reviews and opinions. And I kind of wanted to see if if that's something that you recall saying, or why do you think that you kind of feel numb to other people's thoughts and processes now?
That's interesting. I'm trying to think of the context. Where did that come from?
I'm getting better at interviewing, but not that good where I'm getting my sources. So it's definitely on one of my open tabs. So I will find it and I'll send it to you. But it was like another Q&A thing that you were just kind of like, yeah, I don't really put too much. Like ironically, I don't put too much stock in. I'm almost numb to it, is what you said.
Yeah, there definitely was a period in time where the first thing I did every morning was to go and see what Dr. Whiskey would say about a whiskey, or definitely Serge from Whiskey Fun and Ruben over at Whiskey Notes. It still saddens me to this day that Sam Simmons doesn't do Dr. Whiskey anymore, because I thought he was brilliant. Um, yeah, I would say my appetite for reading other people's notes is not there at all. Like I don't necessarily find interest in seeing what other people say about a whiskey, and it's not because I don't care what they say. I think it's really important that people get the word out about what whiskeys they like, what whiskeys they don't like, or think could be improved. Um, I think as my life got more and more complex and busy, it might be one of those things that just didn't work from a what else can I fit in my day kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so I don't miss it. So I don't necessarily know the context of that statement whenever I said it, but that's definitely how I feel now. It's I love that there's so much whiskey writing out there and blogging, and there are still, Whiskey Fun and Whiskey Notes. Those are the two I pay attention to the absolute most. But other than that, I really kind of move on with my day, figuring out how to sell whiskey and figuring out how to get better prices on bottles and cartons and all that sexy stuff. Can I save 2 pence if I get 1,000 more corks? Maybe I can.
That's I mean, I think that's totally understandable. Maybe a part of it, it just could be that oversaturation. Like the website that you mentioned, that's something that you have to seek out. But now via like Facebook groups and stuff, you just be scrolling down your feed and you'll see Joe Schmo's opinion, who typically works in accounting. You're just kind of like, well, who, like this is too much. There's too many opinions
No, from
out there.
accounting, Drew.
What that's where the gems are. So we actually have a question, and this is from Catherine, and so she's asking, if you have any tips on cracking the mouth code. She's been drinking scotch for 2 years, and she still struggles with it. Which I mean, hopefully if we get you back out to California, you're gonna have to meet Catherine. She's the best. It's been really fun to watch her journey through whiskey. But she wants to know if you have it. When she was in Isla, she feel like she cracked the code and then she lost it. So I don't know, if we need to send her just back to Isla to get it again, or what do you think might be what she could do?
I mean, how many of us are there here? If we all pitch in, I think we can get her back to Isla. I think that's how that works.
Yeah, we'll
You know,
we'll do some math. We'll figure it out.
I had the exact same thing happen to me. I'm sorry, what was your name? Catherine. Catherine, I am so glad that you said that, because I'll never forget. I've never told anyone this. Like, I'm talking about cracking the mouth cold, and boom, I had it there. And then one day, it was gone. It was just gone. And so I said, okay, what did I do? I even went so far as to sit in the chair that I had sat in when I had first cracked it. Like, how do I retrace my steps? How I got it back after having lost it, that I don't remember, but I do remember losing it. But here's what I would say. And actually, I use this anytime I do a tasting, because I think it's really important to understanding a whiskey. So obviously everybody knows your whiskey before you taste it. But probably more importantly than that is use both of your nostrils and keep your mouth open, only breathing in through your nose. When you do that, you can actually taste what you're smelling in the back of your palate. So now you've got your nose primed. You're starting to prime the back of your palate. It's just like flavor foreplay at this point, right? So then you take a small amount of whiskey in your mouth, and this is the part for me. I hold that whiskey on my tongue, and I always tell people, yeah, I could do it. So I say, this is your tongue. This is your tongue on whiskey, and just hold it there. Let the whiskey sit in your tongue, and if it burns your tongue, that's cool. That's okay. And then chew it. Chew it, chew it, chew it. Pretend it's food. Swallow it, and then breathe out through your mouth. The trick is you have to activate all the sections of your tongue. And what I found out is, for me, that cracking of the code, at least for my mouth, was all of a sudden I was able to get this transition from center palate, the center of my tongue, to the back of my palate as the liquid was flowing down my throat. And that's when the flavors popped. But I didn't understand those flavors until I held the whiskey in my mouth for a little bit. So give that a go. Hopefully that works out. The good news is, so long as you have more whiskey, you could just keep on practicing. Practice makes perfect. Hopefully that helped a little bit.
Yeah, I think that was great, and I always I get similar questions, and my advice to people is just you have to just keep trying lots of different things, and that doesn't mean like lots of different whiskeys, but rums, mezcals, tequilas, stuff like that, and really kind of work your palate and kind of give you this really broad sense. And then also with foods too, like kind of what you're talking about, like going around the grocery store and smelling different things and just familiarizing yourself with like, oh, this is what coriander smells like just on its own, and stuff like that. Totally developing that.
The other
Hey, Drew. Sorry, this is Paul. Josh, I just wanted to comment on what you were just saying about activating your whole mouth. I was at a tasting led by Simon Brooking from Lafroig, and he mentioned making sure that he said, just try it, of getting it so that your cup covers the tip of your tongue, so the scotch touches the middle of your tongue first. And just activating that different part of the mouth blew my mind.
Yeah.
So it's just similar to what you were just saying.
That's to hear someone else say that, especially someone like Simon Brooking. That's really good to hear. The other thing that I would add, Catherine, is maybe do what I did. Is if you have a few bottles at the ready, see if you can find some reviews of those bottles and taste the whiskey using that technique while reading the reviews, and see if you can connect with any of those notes. See if just reading those words activate, fire those synapses. That might help.
Nice. So we have a couple questions that are starting to pop up. So people are obviously getting deeper into their whiskeys, which is nice. This is what we like to see. And before we get into, because there's a lot of single Cask Nation questions, I have one last question for you, and then we're going to transition to all single Cask Nation stuff. Okay. But so you're very passionate about music as well, and so I have a two-part question for you, and it is, what happened to Kimono Dragon, and what or who makes the best music for whiskey drinking?
Wow. So so Kimono Dragon, that was my last band. Kimono, like the Japanese attire, dragon like a drag queen.
So it's such a dope name. I loved it when I saw that. I was like, because when I was doing my Google search, I like saw it with that. I was like, I hope that this is the Joshua that I'm talking about. And sure enough, it was. So I was very happy to see that.
Yeah, one of my favorite bands is a band called Sparks. They're still around, but they started in the 70s. They were a glam band, 70s glam, and they had an album called Kimono My House. And so we use that as inspiration for the name of the band. Sadly, we had to break up. I forced the breakup, to be honest. And it's really because I had a full-time job, wife, 2 kids, a full-time band that had me practicing at least once a week and playing many gigs, and sometimes playing gigs out of country. and then I was starting Single Cask Nation. I was starting a business, and my wife and I had a serious conversation. She said, something's got to give, or you're just going to break. And unfortunately, it was the music. I'd been playing in bands since I was 13, and obsessing about being, a rock star since I was 5, and the rock star never happened. But anyway, so we broke up the band, and because of Single Cask Nation. Thanks for getting me sad, Drew.
That's what I'm here for, man. Here to push those buttons and just make my guests vulnerable as I can.
I think musical choice is going to depend on what's in your glass. I think you need, just like with, if you're going to pair wine with food, I think you could pair whiskey with music. If I'm gonna pour something sort of peaty and smoky, then I might want like heavier music. I might want to just throw on some hardcore or some metal band or something like that. I think country music could be great, and I don't even listen to country, but if you're drinking bourbon on a hot day, on the porch, like all of a sudden country music could be a thing. I think the wrong music could affect your whiskey, and the wrong whiskey could affect your music. Like, it all kind of plays in. So I don't think that there's any particular music specific for whiskey. I think you just have to play it by ear.
Okay. That's right. There's a playlist on Spotify that Highland Park put together, and I know when I initially heard it, I was like, "That's really stupid. Like, why would you do that?" And then I listened to it, and I was like, "Okay, I kind of want to drink whiskey right now." So it definitely worked, and with the passion you have for music, maybe it's one of those side projects that you can fill up some of that calendar right now.
You know what I found doesn't fit for any whiskey I've had? And so many people, I think, would disagree with me here, because most people say this is the perfect pairing. I don't think jazz and whiskey fit. I think jazz requires too much brain power to be to have whiskey, to take your attention away from it. I think both require an equal amount of attention, and you're doing each music a disservice by enjoying them together.
Or you're just taking the slide down the slope to wherever you're going.
What?
I like jazz and whiskey because, like, it's, you're just trying to shut off. And so if you have both going and you're drinking really good whiskey and listening to something crazy, that's like some crazy jazz, and you just
see. But my brain is too busy trying to figure out what's going on. Like, okay, what's that time signature there?
No, you're just going down the rabbit hole. There's no judgment at that point. You've clocked out. You're just drinking.
Yeah, I think Joshua, you just understand music too much, that you're about both of those things, like, because you are a bass player, right? So that's gonna, bass obviously very big within the jazz genre.
Yeah, Yudi's no schlub here, though. He's a music. He knows music real well. Or he doesn't.
Well, he's tomorrow's guest, so don't blow the lead for me, okay?
No.
So I got questions for him tomorrow to get into. But okay, so now what we're gonna do, we'll get a little bit more into like the Single Cask Nation and stuff, and and this was a question that I did see a lot today, but it is appropriate to ask, and Michael is the one that put this out there, and he just wanted to know, what the process is, for selecting cask for Single Cask for you and Jason.
So one of the things that we found out is the only way we can get any kind of business moving is to actually go to Scotland. Like, staying home and emailing people and asking for samples is a real pain in the butt because emails just take forever. So the first step in the process is flying to Scotland and showing up at people's doorsteps, letting them know we're going to show up at their doorsteps, so they have samples at the ready. That is seriously the best way to start the process. It used to be we had a broker in Scotland that's not brokering anymore. And what was really nice about visiting with him is we could actually go into his warehouse and just pop bungs and taste this cask and this cask and this cask, and it was seemingly endless, and it was wonderful. But whether we were doing that, excuse me, or if we were stopping in someone's offices to pick up samples, the process remains the same. We take the samples home and we don't make any selections while in Scotland. We need to be away from the whole romantic, ooh, we're in a warehouse, ooh, we're in a place, or at least for me, we're in a place where I'm the only one with the funny accent, we have to get back to a comfort zone where exterior elements aren't influencing our selections. And so one thing that I definitely want to point out, because someone had asked this question on a Zoom last week or something like that, and the question was, who are you picking for? And Michael, actually, you may have been in that one. I'm not sure, but the answer to that is we never pick casks for consumers. We don't, and I don't want this to come out wrong, but we don't necessarily have the consumer in mind when we're selecting casks. We have our own judgment in mind when we're selecting casks. We want to make sure that whether people like it or not, that we are 100% comfortable behind our picks. Because if it fails, that's on us. We don't want it to fail because we thought, this is what consumers like. No, we have to be comfortable with it. And the other thing too is, as an independent bottler, people come to independent bottlers, or they gain a loyalty to independent bottlers because they say, you know what? I liked the Lafroig they bottled. I liked the Ardbeg they bottled. I liked the Glentalkers they bottled. And you get a reputation of being those people who bottle good whiskey. And if you start bottling with other people in mind, you don't stay true to yourself. So if you stay true to yourself, then you gain the customer base that aligns with your palates, and then they will always connect with you. And so that is definitely part of the process. We have to make sure that whatever we select is something that we would want to drink any day, every day, and that we're incredibly proud of it. The physical part of it, first and foremost, texture. We analyze texture probably, well, no, I take that back. First, we nose it. That's right. We nose it first because it has to be interesting. It can't be a one-trick pony. It can't turn us off. It can't be confusing, but it has to be interesting and feel like it will lead places. If it's interesting and feels like it will lead places, then we'll sacrifice our palate. Then we'll put the whiskey over our tongue, because you get palate fatigue really quickly. First sip is texture first. We don't even think about flavor. We're focusing on texture. How is that sitting on the tongue? Is it thin? Is it hot? Is it oily? Is it viscous? What is it? If the texture is great, then fantastic. Then we'll taste it. If the texture isn't great, then we don't taste it again. So it's all these, we have to check the box each step of the way. And at the end of it, what we want is a really lovely textured whiskey that from nose to palate to finish tells this story like a trilogy, like Lord of the Rings, the beginning, a middle, and an end. And it all has to make sense and all has to just work. That's our process.
There was a quote where you kind of did the Lord of the Rings thing and you told the story, but then at one point you interjected like Thor coming down with Captain America, and they might be like you started combining those movies together, and you're like, they're great individual elements, but they just don't work together, and now it's a bad movie. And I thought that was just absolutely hilarious. And now knowing some of your tasting notes, it makes a lot more sense now. So so that's really cool. One thing that I really have come to appreciate about what you guys are doing at Single Cask Nation is that you're really protecting the investment of your members. You guys started as an online only membership, and then that's extended into retail recently. And one thing that you guys do is that if you catch people selling stuff at like a secondary markup or anything like that, those people are kicked out and they're no longer able to do that. So in knowing that, I was curious, it's like, how are the ways that you're finding out about this stuff? Is people just like sending you screenshots? And then are there any particular stories that you're just kind of like, come on, man, like, what are you doing here? Like, do any of those stories kind of creep up and remind you of that?
I can tell there's the way we find out. This is the beauty of having around 8,000 Single Cask Nation members. They're all on Facebook, and the majority of them are our eyes and ears. We'll get emails, we'll get Facebook messages, you name it, and they'll post a picture of Joe Schmo listing one of our wild turkeys for $500, and the comment is, what the hell? I put my name into the lottery. Had I won the lottery and paid the $101, I would have opened that up and I would have shared it with friends and family. That's who we sell to. But there are thankfully a very small handful of people who will get that bottle because they know they can immediately turn it around and put it up on a secondary market page, something like that, and buy it for 101, sell it for 500, 600, 800 bucks. One of our Jubilee bottlings sold for $4,000 just a year and a half ago. It's kind of ridiculous. So we want people to drink those. So I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
I was just wondering, if there was ever any specific situation where you were just kind of,
yes,
or whatever.
Yeah, so I got a really good one. Obviously, I won't mention names to protect the guilty, but we had done a Jubilee in New York, and someone had purchased 2 tickets and couldn't go, but reached out to us and said, we purchased the tickets. Can we still buy Jubilee bottlings anyway? Because the way it worked was, if you're an attendee at the Jubilee, you go to the Single Cask Nation table, you put your name down, and when your name is put down on the list, we'll reach out to you to give you the opportunity to purchase a Whiskey Jubilee Festival bottling. And so this guy reached out to us. He said, we bought some tickets. We couldn't go. Can we buy a Whiskey Jubilee Festival bottling? And at that time, it was a wild turkey. And I said, you know what? I'll sell you a bottle. That's fine. You couldn't make it. No worries. And he said, you know what? My wife was going to be going too. Can she have a bottle as well? And I said, you know what? That's fine. They're not asking for in fact, he said, I'm not even asking for a refund on my tickets. I want to show you in good faith that I want these bottles. So that's fine. So we sold him 2 bottles. And 4 days after we know it arrived to his house, someone forwarded us a picture of this person trying to sell both bottles for $800 each. So it made sense that they didn't want a refund on their tickets, because they knew that they were going to get a massive profit once they sold those bottles. So he was blocked immediately. And I remember a year later, he sent me a private Facebook message saying, have I done my time? Can I get out of jail now? And he's still banned. And anybody who does that is banned. It's just, it's obnoxious to see. Like, I get it. I get it. People want to make money and all that. But because we have so many people that they come to us because they just want to drink whiskey, we feel like we have to protect them because they come to us. If no one came to us, if people are like, yeah, whatever, that's cool, live and let live, then that's fine. But people came to us and said, this just isn't fair. So we had to figure out a way to protect them. And so while we can't block anybody from buying our retail bottlings, we will block them from buying our online bottlings.
Yeah. How many people would you guess, are banned at this point?
27.
27?
27.
Okay. All right. That was just right in the chamber. Good. So we're going to catch up on a couple of questions here. So one question was, you mentioned that, you wanted to hear what people's likes are before you developed a sense about giving them advice on what to try and stuff like that. When did that confidence develop for yourself that you kind of felt like you could take that information and then give someone good advice?
I don't know. Actually, I just asked it.
Okay.
I guess I should say I never hold anything back, and I'm really good at confrontation. And because I wouldn't say I enjoy confrontation, but I can be very confrontational when I want to be. And because I don't have any problem just asking people anything. So I wouldn't have thought twice about asking them. It just seemed to make sense, like, I was, okay. Kind of like when we were talking about at the very beginning, Lagavulin 16 was the door into the whiskey room for me. Like, and I've always looked at it that way. What is going to be someone else's door? And so I need to know, what are the keys on their keychain? If I know the keys on their keychain, then I can show them the door that they need to get into the whiskey room. And so that's just my brain getting there and saying, oh yeah, I can ask them that. What do they enjoy? What kind of beers do they enjoy? Do they enjoy smoked meats? Do they enjoy mushroom dishes? And that'll give me an idea.
Okay. And then as you've leveled up within the whiskey industry, what's a rookie mistake that you've made that you look back on and laugh now?
Oh man. Like a rookie mistake. Yeah, business wise.
It could probably be in general. Like, whatever you think, whatever you laugh at. How about that?
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you something I laugh at all the time. This was before Single Cask Nation started, and I was just blogging, and this was in the earlier days of whiskey blogging when there was maybe 12 of us. Me and Gal Granoff, who he still runs Whiskey Israel, we got along, and we just thought it'd be really fun to start sending one another Hanukkah gifts. And so I bought him a bottle of whiskey from the U.S. that he couldn't get in Israel. And I remember, packaging it up and going to, ship this bottle to Israel. And the person, at the post office said, "So, and what are we shipping here?" I said, "Oh, yeah, it's a bottle of whiskey from my friend in Israel." I said, "Oh, no. That's not how this works." So, what do you mean that's not how it works? I said, "No, you can't send whiskey that's fully illegal." It didn't make sense to me. So I did that on my lunch break, and then after work, I drove to the next town and went to their post office because on Fridays I would get out of work at 3, and they said, "Sir, what are you shipping?" And I said, "I'm shipping olive oil." And that's how I figured out how to ship out a lot of olive oil.
It's funny that you say that, and she was just on the call, but one of our people that's participating in the tasting on Saturday, she was like, "Hey, I know I'm in Colorado, but I don't know if I can, I don't know if you can ship me the stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll send you some olive oil." And it confused her like immensely. She's like, "Why would you send me olive oil?" Like, she's like, "I'm in, but why would you send me olive oil?" And I was
right.
was like, it's whiskey flavored olive oil. So,
Yeah.
so
I've sent olive oils. I've sent lava lamps. People love getting lava lamps these days. It's all the rage.
lava lamp, that's a good one. I feel like that's one that people aren't gonna like argue with because it's so obscure. They'd be like, yeah, okay, sure, lava lamps.
Yeah, okay, those are a thing. All right. He's got a beard. He kind of looks hippie-ish. He's got like lava lamps.
Yeah, he looks like he's into that. Let's see here. Paul Hurwitz wants to know if the Whiskey Jubilee is ever coming back because those are some of the best independent bottlings he's ever had.
First off, thank you, Paul. The one thing that I can say is no, Whiskey Jubilee is not coming back. However, now timelines may change given that we are living in post-apocalyptic times, but assuming the world rebuilds itself, we were looking to have a 10th anniversary massive weekend event. And if we can make that happen, we definitely will. And it will be unlike anything people have done here in the US. So keep an eye on for that. It was meant to be for mid-year 2021, but we'll see how that all sorts itself.
And then Brian would like to know how you decide between retail versus club for your releases.
That's a really good question.
Good job, Brian.
So first off, regardless of whether it is for online or for retail, we're always looking backward before we look forward. So we always want to make sure that we're never duplicating or coming close to what we did previously. You know, at least letting some time pass, you know, so we're not releasing, 3, mid-teen Glen Murrays at the same time or something like that. So we're always looking back to make sure we're keeping the portfolio fresh. Now, when it comes to the difference between online and retail, when it comes to, well, first off, when it comes to online, there's certain things that we can only have online. So for instance, we're working with Glenfarclas for another independently bottled Glenfarclas. We still pinch ourselves to this date that Glenfarclas, who says no to everybody, said yes to us. So we need to make sure we're tending to that relationship. And part of that is that we're never competing with them on store shelves, that has to be sold online. And the same rings true for the wild turkeys that we do. Part of the gentle person's agreement, that we have with them is that they don't want us competing on store shelves with our wild turkey compared to theirs. So we only do that online, and we don't offer those as like store exclusives. There's a lot of stores who would like us to do an exclusive with them, and everybody's first ask is wild turkey, and we always have to say, sorry, we can't do the wild turkey. It would be nice, but we can't. So I can't read that. Limited edition single. Oh, is that their Glenfarclas? Yeah, nice. Those are some good bottlings, some of those old Scots, man. So online is also, we call online our special projects division now. So it used to be that's where everything went. And now that's where our special projects go. And so we target 10 casks per year for the special projects line. So that will be these unusual agreement whiskeys. It'll also be whiskeys that have sort of a bigger story to tell. That's not so easy to tell, just by sticking in a bottle and selling it to, Joe's liquor store. For instance, we were working with Catoctin Creek. They had 2 casks of their rye where they did no cuts whatsoever. It's heads, hearts, tails. It's all of it in the cask. And the whiskey is beautiful. But it's definitely not Catoctin Creek. And because it's not Catoctin Creek, we didn't feel bad about A, purchasing those casks, and B, seeing what that whiskey did if we married the whiskey together and put it into a first fill XPX Sherry Kilchoman cask. So we bought an XPX Sherry Kilchoman cask from Kilchoman, and we put this rye in that. That's a really big story to tell. And, we're going to be tasting it at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, if it makes it to a year. And we're going to sell that online rather than retail, just because even if a retailer could tell that story and has the stamina to tell that story, there aren't going to be many consumers who are just popping into a shop that would necessarily be interested in hearing that full story. So big story items and special arrangement items, that's what goes on our online.
Okay, and then let's see.
Just give me 1 second, sorry. This is my cat's litter box. It's like a robotic litter box, and one of my cats just took a dump, and so now it's self-cleaning itself.
So there was actually a question from Rom who asked if that was a hyperbaric chamber that the cat just climbed into. So
someone asked me if this was where Mork slept.
Oh yeah.
Mindy.
And then let's see. I'm not 100% understanding this question, but Brian asked again, how do you decide to say distiller on bottle?
Oh, no, I see what he's saying there. So there's some instances where you can name the distillery.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right? Is that what you mean, Brian? Yeah, so anytime we can name the distillery, we will name the distillery. And anytime we can't, we've used terms like undisclosed. We've only used that term, undisclosed. And then we've also used code names. So anytime we bottle whiskey from Highland Park and we can't put Highland Park on the label, we just call it Stones of Stenness, because that's the stone circle closest to the distillery. The interesting things about these contracts is, they say just don't print the name. You could talk about it, but you can't print the name. We've never had a contract where they said don't even be cheeky, don't even hint at it. We've never had that kind of contract. I don't even know how legal that would be anyway. But yeah, if we can't use it, we won't, and we will whenever we can. So we're always using MGP anytime we get an MGP cask. I can tell you that we bottled some Angostura rum for export markets, and we bottled it not looking at the paperwork properly, and we weren't supposed to use the Angostura name. And so we had to print up new labels. So anybody who has the bottle that says Angostura rum on it, it's officially a collector's item now. Now it just says Trinidad rum. They gave us a cease and desist.
Nice. Yeah, I've always enjoyed that. I mean, especially like the Stones of Stenness. I thought that was cool. And then I remember one of my favorite ones was actually from Exclusive Malts, where it just said from a distillery in Ireland, and I was like, that's just hilarious.
Yes.
Just about as vague as you can get. So obviously the nature of independent bottling is one and done. So when you think back through all the different bottles that you've done, all these casks that you've gotten to work with, if through some Gandalf magic you were able to have one of those whiskeys just be infinite and last forever, what is the whiskey that you would choose?
Let me grab the bottle. it would be this.
Port Charlotte 14.
Port Charlotte 14. You could tell by the color, it's been in a sherry cask for a little while. So we actually would not have this cask if it weren't for Michael Nolan, who's sitting in this talk right now, because it was his friends who owned the cask, and we purchased it off them, not from the distillery. So this is a perfect excuse to pour this. Thank you.
You're welcome. This is what I'm here for.
The reason why, in case you wanted to know the reason, when it comes to basically any whiskey, I actually prefer a color more like this. I want bourbon, ex-bourbon cask, all the time, all day, every day, because I find sherry oftentimes masks the spirit character, and I'm a spirit guy. I want to taste the distillery. What blew me away about this is the sherry cask amplified the spirit character. It didn't hide it in any way. And it's 60.2% alcohol. It just drinks like a dream. And it's just so sweet and barbecue-y and chocolatey, and it just ticks all the boxes. It's just sometimes the only thing I want to drink.
Nice. So there you go, folks. If you can find it, buy it, and send it to Joshua and tease him that you have a full bottle.
That's all I have left.
So while it's just still on my head, that interview where you said that you were just kind of over other people's reviews was with the Turkey 101 site. So, or like, yeah. So I'll send it to you because I like I said, I still have it up there. But for my last question, you're about to have your number 6 release of both your online and your retail available bottles. Out of the retail side and out of the online side, what whiskey are you the most excited about from each line?
From a flavor standpoint, on the retail side of it, it's our 23-year-old Ben Nevis. Most Ben Nevis that you're going to find is either in sherry, or it's going to go into a blend, even into like a Nika pure malt blend or something like that too. Goes into a lot of that. But from an independently bottled whiskey standpoint, you often find Ben Nevis in sherry. You don't find it in bourbon cask too much. And this is from a second fill bourbon Hoggy. And so it's just all sweet fruits and butterscotch. And again, it's getting back to understanding the Ben Nevis spirit a bit more. And I just think it's such a pretty and elegant whiskey. So from a flavor standpoint, I'd say that. From an excitement standpoint, we bottled 2 milk and honey casks, and we've got 1 for retail, and that's in first fill bourbon. And then we have 1 for online, and that's first fill rum. And I'm really excited about those because we're the first U.S.-based independent bottler to do a milk and honey. There've been other ones. Chanel could tell you. You did the 1-year-old pomegranate cask, right?
Yeah, for Boutique, they had one.
Yeah.
It never came to the States, though. There was no 375 ml bottle, but there was a 500 out of Master of Malt.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. And 500 was for, that's okay. Got it. So we're definitely not the first to bottle them, but we're the first in the U.S. and I'm kind of excited about that. And I usually don't. I'm not a very like prideful kind of a person, but I think that there's something cool about the Jewish Whiskey Company bottling whiskey from a distillery out of Tel Aviv. I think that's kind of cool. That has me a bit excited. And then from a flavor standpoint, from online, I'm really excited about this 9-year-old Aaron that we just bottled. First fill, bourbon, 9 years old, just massive, fresh apples, just a lovely, lovely, like orchard fruit feast with a touch of salt at the end. And just, we haven't done an Aaron in probably 4, almost 5 years. So I'm pretty excited about this one.
Nice. Nice. I'm actually drinking a little milk and honey tonight, so I'm very excited to try those other casks that you have coming. We did a Zoom call with those guys last week, and it was super fun to kind of see that distillery. So then Rocco had a question. He wants to do a barrel pick for the River City Whiskey Society with Single Cask Nation. Is that a possibility?
That is definitely a possibility. Firstly, thank you. I love that idea. We could do malt. There is some bourbon, but I tell you that the cost of MGP casks have gone through the roof. And while we can get plenty of Dickel and off-profile Dickel, not everybody wants Dickel. So, like, if you're interested in doing a malt or a really nice grain, then we can definitely go down that path. And, we've got, we don't have a huge inventory. We're not a massive company. We have about 70-ish casks we're sitting on right now, looking at some more. So if you're interested, you can reach out to me separately. Let me know the styles of whiskey you're interested in, and then we can see if we can get in that wheelhouse.
Awesome. I get the commission check on that, so I'm very pro this conversation. And then let's see. Then Chanel asked, "Are you aging or finishing anything right now?" Chanel, is it? How do you pronounce it?
Pronounce what? My name, Chanel.
Chanel. Okay, yeah, I know you started.
But
you started looking at me weird, and I was like, "Well, that's how my niece pronounces her name." So shit, like I don't know what I did. But yeah, so
yeah, I actually didn't know, Josh. Do you guys actually finish or age anything, or you're taking what you've got and bottling it if you like it?
Since we started, that's what we did. We would buy on the spot. If we liked it, we'd bottle it. However, now that we've grown and we've expanded our suppliers, we've actually brought on some pretty big suppliers, which I'm really happy about. The problem with bringing on big suppliers that will give you, a lot of whiskey at a good price is that a lot of that whiskey is sitting in refill casks and needs work. And so we've actually started with a new bottling hall just at the turn of the year, and we're basically working up a re-racking program. So last year we started a relationship with Miguel Martin to source sherry casks. We have some cognac casks at the ready that we're going to be doing some finishing in, which I'm pretty excited about. We have access to some muscatel and some Dechar Rechar casks, which I'm pretty excited about. We've only finished a couple of times. We did it once with our 28-year-old Cambus. We got a cask of Cambus that was it was good. It did one really good thing, but the price was amazing. And we said, well, if it does one really good thing and we re-racked it and then it did many good things, then maybe we have something here. So the whiskey was cheap enough where we felt comfortable to get a fresh muscatel cask. And we finished that Cambus and muscatel for 6 months. And then it just turned into strawberry shortcake and just glorious stuff. So we're not afraid to finish. It's just, it was never anything we did, not with any regularity, but now again, sort of understanding the business a bit more as you grow as a business, you realize that there are things you need to put into place, because the big players selling you the less expensive whiskey are going to force you to spend money on casks to bring that whiskey up to snuff, to make it bottleable, sellable, drinkable. So we're not there yet, but we're getting there.
And then see, Ro had another question, that you had done these exclusive bottles for retailers before, and he was just wondering, is it the same as doing a barrel pick, or do you have a program that he can enroll his shop in that to get bottlings from Single Cask Nation?
I'm trying to think what shop we did an exclusive for. We've talked to people about doing exclusives. We did an exclusive with JVS. We did a 20-year-old Tormore for JVS. We did an 8-year-old Sherry Ben Nevis for Skurnik, who is our New York distributor. There is no real program. Like, we treat it as on a case-by-case basis. You know, do you have that? Who?
Mark has it.
Mark, nice. I love that.
Mark always pulls out that cool bottle eventually at some point in the conversation, because he's been to pretty much all of these. It's pretty great, but he sits there in his big ass chair, and then it just goes boom. Here's this dope bottle. And,
the only one I had. That's totally random tonight.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh. Anyways.
Somehow we always tee him up every freaking meeting. We always tee him up.
Thank you.
I just love that JVS took a Tormore as an exclusive. Like, that is such an esoteric distillery.
Have you seen our portfolio?
And there's the answer.
That's what I always tell people. It's like, hey, if you want cool shit, give me a call, because I got it for you. If you want, it's more of the basics. I'm not your guy, but if you want cool shit, so you got to talk to JVS. Let's see here. And then here's a question from Gary. He asks, is there any virgin oak finishes possible in the future?
There definitely are virgin oak possibilities in the future. The thing is, in Scotland, however, it's easier and cheaper to do a dechar rechar cask, or you can call it STR as well, because most cooperages out in Scotland are dealing with used oak, and the closest typically you're going to get is to just rechar a cask. They are accessible. You can get the new charred oak casks out there, but they're just sort of fewer and far between. So we'll play more with dechar rechar. I'm actually thinking. Well, actually, I can't say what I was about to say. So never mind.
Come on, this virtual happy hour has broken so much news over the past 3 weeks. Like, just random things that always before they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to say this, and they're like, fuck it, whatever, I'm gonna say it. Like, we found out about somebody's promotion before they got it last week. It was great. So if you want to, but no peer pressure. Like,
this one I need to hold on to. This one I need to, I do apologize.
It's okay. Okay, it looks like Brian has a question. Let me unmute him. Let's see. All right. I don't know what I'm doing.
Hi.
There we go.
Hi.
Question for you. Can you give us some tasting notes about your 23-year-old Imperial that I'm holding in front of me?
Nose, delicious. Palate, so that's an interesting question. So first off, the Imperial, I mean, you know this, Brian. It's a demolished distillery. It's the #1 distillery that I collect, and I don't collect, but I collect Imperial. It's just I'm absolutely obsessed with this distillery, and one of the reasons I'm obsessed with it is somewhat similar to Springbank. Imperial is there's no mistaking in Imperial, just like there should be no mistaking a Springbank. I think those of all the distilleries in Scotland, those are the two that I can nose blind and say, yep, it's from that distillery. And I would say, 90% of the time I'd be right. Maybe 89% of the time I'd be right. So tasting notes, like the reason that we bottled that is it is just a classic example of imperial, right? So so there's that just clean, minerality that is just a lovely thread from nose to palate to finish. There's this buttery texture to it that I absolutely love. Dried Granny Smith apples. Slight saltiness, if I remember. I'm going by my head.
I haven't opened it yet.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, there's this lovely like dried apple note in there that I absolutely love, and the texture is just gorgeous. It's like warm butter. It's really, really nice. And you, Brian, I know you love your imperials. So, is that one going to be the best one you've ever had? Probably not. What I would say though is that it is an excellent example of whiskey from that now sadly dead distillery.
I think most whiskeys from Imperial are excellent. So,
Agreed. Yeah.
It's kind of to me the same level as North of Scotland is from Scots. I don't know. Yep. It's that same mystique. It's no longer available. I've got a number of collector bottles of it, and I kind of cherish them because they're so oddly. I'm unlike you who loves bourbon barrel. I am a sherry/port hog. Okay, so for me, North of Scotland being put into the sherry barrel, and it comes out almost as black as the ace of spades, and add to it that it's an unheard of distillery.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
People don't know it. And it's that kind of a thing for me on that one, to the same as this one, because it's closed. It's got that same mystique for me. Not so much because I'm never going to sell these bottles, but it's because I just love having it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I know I'm paraphrasing it, but Mark Watt, formerly of Cadenheads, once said something along the lines of, if you ever want a distillery's whiskey to taste better, shut them down. All of a sudden, their whiskey tastes amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions or comments for Joshua while we still have him? I know we're starting to really push the limits for his bedtime right now. No? Okay. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tomorrow night, we have Chris Udi, also from Impact's JVS, talking Japanese whiskey with us. Wednesday, I have Jane Campbell from Glass Revolution. And next week, we got a couple more. We have Stephen Davies from Penderyn, Chase Babcock from St. Benevolence, and Matt Petrick from Cocktail Wonk. It looks like this shelter in place is going to continue, so I'm going to start working on May's schedule for who we're going to have as guest. But you guys, thank you so much. What this whole thing is about is giving us a little bit of normalcy in a world that's not normal at all. Especially thank you to Joshua for being so open tonight with us, giving us so much great stories, anecdotes, information. I can't even imagine what Catherine's notebook must look like right now. It's got to be just ridiculous. So it's this was a really cool conversation, and I already have people giving me feedback talking about how much they enjoyed it. So Joshua, thank you for doing what you do. Please keep up the good work. I know you will, because it's your passion. And cheers to everybody, and hopefully we see you again on one of these calls.
Thanks for inviting me, Drew.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to see so many lovely faces. Sam, lovely to see you. Paul, Elijah, Chanel. Chanel, are you in London right now?
Yeah.
Jesus, Christmas, it's like forever o'clock right now for you.
5 now. I was on a call with Chicago that went quite late, so I thought I would jump on.
Thank you for doing that. Go to sleep, please.
This is an international happy hour, Joshua. I mean, I've had people from the UK, I've had people from Australia. I'm going places, so just strap yourself to my rockets, and we're going. We're going international with this. But yeah, no, you guys, thank you so much. Hopefully, we'll see all of you again soon. But if not, stay healthy, stay safe, drink lots of whiskey, and we'll see you later. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks again.